Time travel is one of the coolest concepts of sci-fi in my opinion, until you actually start to think about it, because the more you try to make sense of it, the less it works, and no movie proves this better than Back to the Future. On the surface, the story seems simple. Marty McFly accidentally travels to 1955, nearly erases his own existence, fixes it, and then heads to a futuristic 2015 where people wear neon space outfits and ride hoverboards. But here's the thing. Back to the Future is full of so many paradoxes, plot holes, and time travel logic that doesn't hold up under even the slightest scrutiny. Once you start noticing them, you'll never watch the trilogy the same again. Let's start with the biggest paradox in the entire movie, the infamous fading photo scene. When Marty prevents his parents from meeting, his siblings start fading from a photograph he brought from 1985. This is a cool visual trick, but scientifically, it makes no sense. If Marty erased his own future, he wouldn't slowly fade like a Polaroid losing exposure, he would instantly cease to exist. Because if his parents never met, he was never born, and if he was never born, he wouldn't be in 1955 to prevent them from meeting, which means they would meet, which means he would be born, and now we're stuck in an infinite loop of paradoxical nonsense. This is a classic example of the grandfather paradox, where changing the past makes it impossible for the time traveler to exist in the first place. In reality, the timeline would either immediately overwrite itself, erasing Marty the moment he changed history, or it would create an alternate timeline where he never existed. But in the Back to the Future universe, the logic seems to be that time change is gradual, as if the timeline is on a delay, which makes not much sense to me, but whatever. But things get even messier when you look at Biff's timeline. In Back to the Future Part 2, old Biff steals the DeLorean, goes back to 1955, and hands his younger self a sports almanac, creating an entirely new, darker timeline where Biff becomes rich and powerful. That part is fine, until you realize that when old Biff returns to 2015, everything is still the same. In reality, the moment young Biff used the almanac, the future would have instantly changed, and the 2015 old Biff came from would never have existed. He would have either vanished mid-time travel or returned to a completely different future, but instead he gets out of the DeLorean, stumbles away, and only then starts fading out of existence. It's as if the timeline conveniently waits for him to return it before it actually updates. And why? Because if it changed immediately, Doc and Marty wouldn't have been able to get the DeLorean back and the plot would have ended right there. And while we're on the topic of things that don't make sense, why don't Marty's parents recognize him? He spends a full week in 1955 directly influencing their lives and literally replaces his dad in certain situations. Lorraine even has a massive crush on him, yet when Marty returns in 1985, they don't bat an eye at the fact that their son looks exactly like that weird kid from high school who introduced them. Even if we assume George and Lorraine forgot specific details about Marty's face, wouldn't they at least have a weird feeling of deja vu? It's like if someone who looks exactly like your teenage crush showed up 30 years later and was your child. You'd probably have some questions. But nope, they just move on with their lives like nothing weird ever happened. Maybe Lorraine convinced herself she was just hallucinating from all the drinking she was doing in high school. Now that we're talking about Back to the Future Part 2, we can also talk about one of its biggest unanswered questions, the missing alternate Marty. When Marty and Doc return to 1985 and find out that Biff has turned it into a dystopian crime empire, the timeline has clearly changed. But here's the issue. This version of the 1985 should already have Marty McFly living in it. If Biff had been in power for years, Marty should have grown up in a completely different environment. So where is he? Is he in Switzerland? Did Biff have him killed? Or is there a Marty McFly body hidden somewhere in Hill Valley that no one is talking about? The movie never explains this because, once again, if there are two Martys, it would completely mess up the plot, so the filmmakers just ignore it and hope you don't notice. But nothing, absolutely nothing in the series makes less sense than the ending of Back to the Future Part 3. By this point, Doc has decided to stay in the Old West, falls in love, and has a family. That's fine, whatever. But then, somehow, he manages to build a fully functional flying time-traveling steam train in the 1800s. I have a couple of questions. Where did he get the materials for a time machine? Who helped him build it? Why did he even need a time machine if he was happy living in the past? And most importantly, what happens now? The movie ends with Doc showing up in the flying train, giving Marty some vague words of wisdom, and then just leaving. Does he keep time traveling? Does he settle down somewhere else? Does he go to the future and invent something even crazier? We never find out. And that's why Back to the Future remains one of the most paradox-filled, logic-breaking time travel movies ever made. But here's the thing. We don't watch Back to the Future for accurate time travel science. We watch it because it's fun. It's one of the most entertaining, imaginative, and perfectly paced adventure movies of all time. And the fact that its time travel logic is completely broken almost makes it better, because trying to piece it all together just adds to the chaos. So does Back to the Future make any sense? Absolutely not. but that's part of the reason why we love it. What do you think, though? Which paradox in the Back to the Future trilogy bothers you the most, or do you just accept the nonsense and enjoy the ride? Drop a comment for me down below, and if you enjoyed this mind-melting breakdown, don't forget to like and subscribe. I really appreciate it, because I've got way more time travel mysteries, movie paradoxes, and insane theories coming up for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the future.